Hi, it's Neil from Mighty Little Green Machine. In today's video, we're going to be adding some auxiliary lights to my ATV. Really, the only thing I do with my four-wheeler these days is plow my driveway because I just don't have time to use it. And the lights on this thing, this is a 2014 Polaris Sportsman 570. The lights on it are just not bright enough. I have changed all the bulbs over to LEDs and it's still not bright enough. And besides that, when I'm plowing with it during the winter and I bring my plow all the way up, it kind of blocks these lights. So I'm going to add a couple of lights that I actually had left over from my 1025R, so I already owned them. And then wire them into a switch. And then I really don't like the way these look. I think they look funny, but this will clear the plow. My game plan is then come springtime, I'll just flip them upside down, put them down here inside the grill so they're protected, and it hopefully won't look as funny. I may end up changing the lights too. I don't know if these are the best solution, but again, I own them. So everything that I'm doing here today, I already own. Let's get started. Okay, so far, I bought these pods or light holders at Tractor Supply, so they bolt to this bar. Obviously, you got to mount the way it works for you. They weren't a ton of money. I think they were like $40, maybe less. And you choose the right size for the right size bar because it'll do different sizes. It's got a slot to put your lights on, and that just makes it so you don't have to drill any holes, or gives you a way to mount it. And then this covering here was already on these lights, and I added this covering to bring it up through into underneath. That's just like a Chinese finger. And you slide it down and you tighten it up, and it just kind of protects everything from chafing, and honestly quite makes it look nicer. That material I got on Amazon. I'm not going to focus so much on the lights, obviously, because they're already mounted, but I've had some requests based off a real early video I did with wiring lights on the 1025R on how to do wiring. So this is a pretty simple project, but I thought I'd show you how I'm going to head and connect all the wires and what steps I use and the products that I use. So next now we've got to start the wiring process. You can see so far I've just kind of brought these wires up, and this is where the finger terminates. So we've got 4 wires here, 2 for each light, 1 ground and 1 power. Black is ground, red is power. Almost always when you do auxiliary lights, it'll be red and black. And black on a vehicle is always a ground, and red is always a power, as long as it was done correctly. So the next step now is I'm going to have to figure out where I'm going to ground these. And I think, if you can see this solenoid down, I can't know if I can reach to it or not, see it, down here, that's for my winch. I've got a ground cable on that already that grounds to the frame. You want a good ground or your lights won't work right. So I think I'm going to tie my ground in there, but I don't want, that's got battery power going to it. I don't want these to be on battery switch. I want them to be on the ignition, so that when I shut them off, or when I shut the four-wheeler off, turn the key off, it'll turn the lights off. So the next step is I'm going to find an ignition source in the fuse box. It's right here. That's run by the key. So I'm going to show you how to do that if you don't have it labeled, and how you can go ahead and check it with either a test light or a voltage meter.
Here, what I'm doing is just checking to find power. So there's a couple of ways you can do this. You can do it with a test light, which you would just find a ground, a good ground, and then when you put the test light into some place where you have power, you will it'll light up. Well, I'm just using a multimeter. It works the same way. It's on DC voltage. I've got the negative hooked to a good ground. I've got the positive put into that clip that I found, that connector, and now I'm going to check power with the key off, and then I'm going to check power with the key on. So you can see here I've got no power. Now I turn the key on, and I've got 12 volts. So now I know that this is an ignition sourced power supply so that I can go ahead and use it for my lights. And when I turn the key off, the lights will shut off. What I've done is I put a spade connector on an inline fuse. If you haven't done this before, you always want to put an inline fuse between your power source and your switch. So in case you get a short, it blows the fuse. I learned that lesson the hard way when I was younger and dumber, and I almost burnt my Jeep to the ground because I had no fuses on some really high drawing off-road lights, and the wire made contact, and the sheathing all melted. So you always want to use an inline fuse. I buy these at, I don't know, like groups of 10, and I keep some in my electrical kit at all times. Then you just select the fuse that you want, put it in there, and then that will be our power connection. So from this, we're going to run to one side of the switch. Okay, so I'm going to put my switch up here in this bezel. Now, one thing, and again, learned this the hard way, when you are doing something like this, make sure you check underneath and make sure the switch that you're going to add is going to have room for clearance. So I'm going to have to go up here so it clears that handlebar. I don't want it rubbing on anything. I also want it to fit, obviously. I've done that before. I drilled a hole and then found out that the switch won't fit or whatever I'm having to be doing. Now, this is a real simple switch. Where are you? Okay. It's on off. And it's got two posts. One post is going to be power in. One post is going to be power out to the lights. And all that this is doing is creating a loop. So when I turn this on, it closes inside and connects the two power in, power out, and causes a loop. Automotive 12-volt wiring or anything 12 volt is really not difficult. You're always just trying to complete a circuit. So I got to bring power from to the switch, from the switch, the lights, and then when I turn it on, it connects those power together. And when I turn it off, obviously it shuts it off. So I'm going to go ahead and get this switch mounted, and then we'll run some wires. Okay, I wanted to show you a couple of things. First of all, I decided to run two different color wires from the switch. Friendly, leave it. The red's going to be my power wire from the ATV to the switch. The yellow is going to be power out from the switch to the lights. That's only because I got to run this down inside underneath, and I want this way I'll know what color is what. Normally I would use red for power, but this that's what I got to do. Now, I was also going to show you how these heat shrink butt connectors work. So it's actually very, very simple. I've stripped the wire, and I'm throwing everything all over the floor. I stripped the wire. Now I'm just going to, and I've just twisted this together. Now I'm going to slide this connector over, and these just crimp. And I'm just going to crush that connection together. And I'm going to test it, because if it's not going to stay now, it might come apart. Okay, that's good. And then they're heat shrink. So what I'm going to do is just take my lighter. You can use a heat gun too. And heat this up, not getting too close. I'm not looking to burn it. I'm going to keep twisting it, because I'm going to do it all the way around. And what that's doing is, you can see, is that shrunk that, and it sealed it to the wire. So now that's a moisture-proof connection, especially where it's going to be on the ATV and going to be plowing. So I'm going to get the other one done, and I'll get these wires run, and we'll go to the next phase. Okay, so I've got the switch mounted. I've got my wires hooked to it. My red is going to be power in. My yellow is going to be power out. I zip tied them off to something that's going to keep them from running around. Now, here's another tip. Make sure you leave yourself plenty of slack. You're going to have to take things apart again. I've done this way too many times too, where I've made the wire too short, and then you can't get it apart, or it's hard to put together, or if you have a problem and have to cut and splice it, you have nothing there. So make sure you leave yourself plenty of slack. So I'm going to mount this bezel back down again, and then zip tie those wires in, and we'll come back and finish this connection. So we connected the fused wire. with a solderless connection, and that's plugged in now to our ignition switch accessory. Got our new fuse in there. We've connected the yellow wire to the lights using another solderless connection. And now I just got to put a ring terminal on these grounds, and I'm going to connect it to this ground right here for the winch. And then we'll be ready to try it. And that's what it looks like all wired up. We got our ground on there now, our power. All I got to do under here is put it together, but let's go ahead and test this. So now the moment of truth. Let's see if this works. So I've got the switch off. We'll turn the key on. Let's throw the switch on. Yeah, you can see the lights are working. Now what happens when I shut the key off? The lights turn off. So that's all there is to it. There's really nothing to wiring 12-volt accessories, and that kind of works for any accessory. Yeah, you can add more items to it. You can put a lighted switch, which really is just running another wire. But I didn't feel the need for all that. So hopefully that helped you with something. If you have any questions, let me know. Thanks for joining me today doing this project, and I'll see you next time on Mighty Little Green Machine.